Liverpool won the Merseyside Derby. The Reds were 2-0 winners over Everton at Anfield, but they also might have just solved the biggest tactical issue they've had since April of this year and given their title credentials a major boost in the process. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Tactics Board here on the American Scouser. And if you don't already, you should subscribe to the American Scouser, like this video, and subscribe to the American Scouser for more content just like this. And today we're going to take a closer look at Liverpool's left-hand side. Their usual left-back, Andy Robertson, has just had shoulder surgery and he's going to be out for some time, which gives Liverpool a problem to solve on that left-hand side. Now, previously, as we all know, Liverpool used to line up like this. It was a 4-3-3 with the full-backs, Robertson on the left and Trent Alexander-Arnold on the right, pushing high and wide to make full use of their creativity. This meant that the wingers, Mohamed Salah and Sadio Mane, usually could get into these more dangerous goal-scoring central positions, and it allowed the midfield, the three in midfield, to stay nice and narrow and compact, and the defenders would play with the famous high defensive line. And what this meant was that when these creative players at fullback could get up the pitch, they would swing, let's say, across into the box, and if the opponent headed it away or the ball came loose, there were three players in the midfield in this narrow configuration who could snap onto the loose ball, they could counter press, win the ball back, and stop opponent counterattacks at source. But as we know, last year, these three players, usually Fabinho, Henderson, and Thiago, just didn't quite have the legs to carry out this counter press effectively. And what this meant was teams could then exploit these spaces, these massive gaps in behind where the fullbacks would typically be, because they could just attack those spaces directly, get in behind Liverpool's backline and cause them massive problems. So the solution for Jurgen Klopp was quite clear. We just need to bring in some new midfielders who can carry out this counter press that will make us much more effective again, and we'll go back to winning football matches. Except this became clear partway through the season. There was no way of getting new players in. The transfer window wasn't open, and there was still a season to try and salvage. So instead of changing personnel, Jurgen Klopp made a tactical change. And we're all familiar with this tactical change now. It's this 3-box-3 formation that Liverpool have used ever since. By bringing Alexander-Arnold into midfield from the right-back position, Liverpool now have 4 players in this central area instead of 3. That means that the midfield has gone back to being nice and narrow, nice and compact, because there's an extra body in there, and now they're able to counter-press so much more effectively. But also, on those occasions when the counter-press is beaten, which will happen sometimes, there are now 3 players in the back line instead of just 2, which means there's a lot less space for opponents to exploit on the counter-attack when they're able to get past the counter-press. So Liverpool, with this tactical change, the counter-press became more effective, and they also became more secure defensively whenever the last line of defense needed to get involved. But this also had ramifications for what Liverpool could do in possession, because Alexander-Arnold, being in the center of the pitch, meant that the whole pitch has opened up for him. He can use his whole range of creative passes to get the ball forward and make sure that Liverpool can still create chances. So even though he doesn't play as many creative passes or get as many assists as he once did, he's still a really important part of Liverpool's attack, maybe more important than ever, because he's now Liverpool's main progressive passer in midfield, getting the ball in midfield, progressing it up the pitch to the danger players in the final third. There is a downside to this approach, though, and it's the impact that it has on Andy Robertson. See, Robertson is also a world-class attacking creative fullback, but for this system to work, he has to play effectively as a centre-back. He takes up this position here on the left side of the back three, and he has to stay there in order for the team to remain defensively solid. And he's not a bad defender. Even though centre-back isn't his natural position, he's not a really bad centre-back. He's done very well since he's had to adapt. But if you take a closer look at Liverpool's results, one defeat in all competitions since this tactical switch occurred. But if you take a closer look at the results, you see that Liverpool dropped points in a draw against Arsenal. They drew against Aston Villa last season. They needed a last-minute winner to get all 3 points against Tottenham. And that's continued this season. They've drawn against Chelsea. They've drawn against Brighton. They needed some late heroics to win against Newcastle and to change shape because they've gone one player down with a red card. And they were beaten by Tottenham Hotspur this season as well, playing this way. Although, again, red cards played a big factor in that game. So if Liverpool want to take that next step, bolster their title credentials and really challenge the very best teams, they have to get better results against the top teams than they've been able to get so far. And then this left-sided issue becomes particularly pertinent in that context when you consider that Robertson is going to miss games against Manchester City and Arsenal before he comes back from injury. The derby against Everton, coming after the international break where Robertson sustained his injury, was then the first chance for Jurgen Klopp to show us how he intends to solve this problem for those big games going ahead. And he did go with Kostas Tsimikas, the deputy left-back, in this position that Robertson has been playing in on the left side of a back three. Now, Tsimikas, as we know, is this creative, attacking fullback, similar to Robertson. That's why he was signed to be Robertson's deputy. And so he has similar issues playing as a centre-back, which isn't his natural game. However, once the game got underway, it became clear that Tsimikas wasn't playing as a centre-back at all. He was getting higher up the pitch into these more adventurous, attacking, creative spaces he likes to get in as a fullback. And that's clear from the average positions of... When it comes up, we'll see it. The average positions of every player on the pitch. You see number 21 over here, Kostas Tsimikas, getting up there, getting involved in the attack and having a lot of chances to contribute to the attack going forward. In other words, able to express himself and play his natural game rather than being shoehorned into this left-sided centre-back role. Yet Liverpool did keep a clean sheet and were relatively defensively secure throughout the game. So how did they do it? Well, going into this game, Jurgen Klopp would have known that Everton would likely try and compensate for the fact that Liverpool have better players than them by outnumbering them in a certain part of the field, most likely midfield, by playing this 4-5-1 that Sean Dyche has used a lot since he became Everton manager. And that meant that Liverpool would probably have one, maybe two players in the first line of pressure for Everton. And that meant they knew the build-up unit would not come under too much pressure. So instead of putting Tsimikas into that area, in this kind of setup here, what they actually did was pushed him higher up the pitch, split the centre-backs, Van Dijk and Konate, and used Alisson, the goalkeeper, as the third player in build-up. So when Liverpool had the ball, knowing they wouldn't come under too much pressure in this phase of play, they would use Alisson in the centre of this three, and Tsimikas had license to get further up the pitch. And what this meant was Diaz could then come into these more central regions where he can be more likely to get goals and assists, and Jota then was free to drop into the midfield. And the big impact that this had was that this 5v4 overload that Everton were trying to create in midfield, playing a 4-5-1 against Liverpool's midfield four, the midfield box, that was completely neutralised because now Liverpool had Jota dropping in. It meant that Liverpool had 5 players in this area. So now Liverpool could easily build up against the first line of Everton's pressure with this situational back three, using Alisson as a build-up player. They had equal numbers in midfields. They could win the midfield battle, and they still had coverage either side with Tsimikas and Salah providing width, and Diaz could get into these more central areas, which meant we could get more crosses into the box, where you'd see Jota then peeling off, getting involved, Szoboszlai arriving from deep Liverpool, pushing right up, crowding around the Everton penalty box, creating pressure, which ultimately led to the situation where Everton had a player sent off. But before we get there, I do have one thing to show you, which is an example of all of this in action. So here we can clearly see early on in the game, here's Kostas Tsimikas on the ball, out left, pushed right up the pitch. And he actually has all the time in the world to pick out one of these crosses into the box. So he's right up the pitch, providing the width on the left-hand side, doing what he loves to do, crossing balls into the box. And there's Luis Diaz, nominally our left winger, who would be out here. He's in the centre trying to crash the box. Gravenberch's got in there. There's Jota. You see Salah coming in on the back post. So Liverpool had full coverage across the width of the pitch, with Tsimikas providing that width on the left and crossing balls into the box. Now, on this occasion, the attack broke down. Everton took a long time getting it out, and so Liverpool were able to come back into their defensive shape. But the danger of playing this way is that Alisson, to be the third defender in the back line, has to sort of sweep up behind and be a real sweeper keeper, which means he's way off his line. And there was an example of this. You see Alisson here, way off his line. About 20 minutes later, there's what probably should have been a foul on McAllister that wasn't called, and Everton get the ball. And Amadou Onana sees Alisson here, has a go on goal, tries to catch him out. That should show you just how well he managed to do it. But the fact that Alisson's in this position as the sort of sweeper playing behind the back line, but is the third player in the back line, that allows Tsimikas to push up, so we don't have to take him out of position. But it does carry this risk of Alisson potentially being embarrassed at least once per season. Of course, the pivotal moment in this game from a tactical perspective actually happened on Everton's side when they had a player sent off and went down to 10. Ashley Young came off from the red card, and Everton brought on two defenders and dropped into a 5-3-1 shape. So Liverpool had to change accordingly. And they did actually bring Tsimikas off, but what they then did in order to create their situational back three is still instructive to the topic of this video. So here we have Harvey Elliott and Darwin Nunez have come on. We've seen Kostas Tsimikas and Ryan Gravenberch go off. Liverpool have switched to this shape almost with Diaz and Elliott playing like wing backs, but really with Everton reduced to 10 players. It was more like they were playing as wingers, and they didn't really need to be fullbacks in this situation. And so Alexander-Arnold actually found himself dropping deepest in between these centre-backs here to get on the ball in deeper areas where he knew he'd have plenty of time, and he could play almost like a quarterback, pinging balls out to these wide areas, forcing Everton's unit to come over and then trying to progress the ball quickly across the width of the goal, find some space at the back post and try and score or create an opportunity. We ended up seeing the big moment being Diaz gets the ball on this left-hand side. He goes 1v1 and then cuts the ball back from the byline. It hits Michael Keane's arm. Liverpool have a penalty from which they take the lead. And so even though Tsimikas then came off and there wasn't a left-back playing on the pitch, we still had a player dropping in. First it was Alisson, now it's Alexander-Arnold, forming this situational back three between the two centre-backs. So we still have this structure in case the ball gets turned over, but now it's Alexander-Arnold dropping into it rather than the goalkeeper being used as an outfield player. And so what we learned from this game is that Liverpool are going to be tactically rigid in the sense that they are going to try and create this shape, this structure that they think is going to work best for them, help them to control games and stop opponents from hitting their goal. But the way in which they create this rigid tactical structure can be very fluid and very flexible. Even if they have players missing, even if the game changes because they score a goal or the opponent goes down to 10, or in some cases this season, Liverpool have gone down to 10, they can still find new solutions to create this shape using different approaches. And so that fluidity, that flexibility, allied to the tactical astuteness that they're displaying to play in this way and get the best out of the personnel they've got to solve opposition problems and create problems for any opponent they face, bodes really well for their ability to go deep in multiple competitions, especially the Premier League. Thanks so much for watching this episode of the Tactics Board. We hope you enjoyed it. All that remains for me to say is
like and subscribe, smash that like button.
Subscribe, smash that like button, and make sure you catch the next episode of the Tactics Board. Until then, see you soon and have a great day.